How did one of the largest refugee movements in modern human history change the culture and the food scene of Orlando forever? I'm Phil Kruse, and welcome to the Orlando Real Estate Lifestyle. Have you ever been to Kobe Steakhouse? Yeah, you have. Have you ever chuckled at the Dongaco signs in the Mills 50 district? Is pho your not pho? Is pho your favorite soup, like it is my son's? If you answered yes to any or all of these questions, then Orlando's strong Vietnamese culture has made an impact on you. In today's episode, I'll be discussing why the Mills 50 district can easily be described as Orlando's Little Vietnam, why we have such a strong Vietnamese culture in Orlando to begin with, and some of the key entrepreneurs of Vietnamese descent that are driving Orlando's food scene and culture. But first, before we get started, of course, I am a real estate agent, and one of my main lead sources are listeners and viewers like you. So when it's your time to make a major real estate decision, think of me, Phil Kruse. That's Kruse with a K. You already know a portion of all my commissions go to charity. I volunteer every Wednesday at the New Image Youth Center. That's where I donate the majority of my commissions, unless, of course, you have a charity that you are passionate about, and I'd be happy to donate my commissions to that charity of your choosing. Follow me on all social media platforms. Search for me at Phil Kruse. That's Kruse with a K, Kruse. Super active on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram with lots of great shorts, clips about Orlando real estate and lifestyle, the culture, what's going on around here. I post one every Friday about my favorite things going on during that weekend. And of course, you're watching me on YouTube, you're listening to me, subscribe to my channel. You're going to get a notification every Monday when I post a new YouTube video or a new podcast on Spotify or Apple. Make sure you turn your notifications on. I have a whole bunch of stuff on there, including one that's related, episode that's related to this one, where we're talking a little bit about Vietnamese food, the Michelin-Star restaurants, the Michelin Guide, the Bib Gourmand. These are all Michelin ratings of all the different restaurants in Orlando. I have a great history of that. It's an episode that I did. Check it out. But let's dive right in here. Imagine you escaped a refugee camp by boat to later create a company that is now Disney's official bridal provider. Whoa. Or imagine you were airlifted out of your home country, to later run a successful law practice, supporting your fellow immigrants right here in Orlando. Look, Vietnamese immigrants are a huge part of Orlando's culture. That culture came in and single-handedly transformed the intersection of Mills 1792 and State Road 50. And now it is called, or at least I call it, Little Vietnam, of course, also known as the Mills 50 district. They introduced new cuisine to Orlando: pho, banh mi, boba tea. Look, I'm from Miami. I never had any of these dishes before until I moved into Orlando and got introduced to them by friends. But why? Why does Orlando have a little Vietnam? Well, in 1975, you may have heard of a war called Vietnam, the Vietnam War. It ended. Saigon fell, which is the capital of South Korea, which was our democratic partner. And unfortunately, the communist North came in and took over. It was a tragic thing, and refugees had to flee, like they oftentimes do when taken over by communist regimes and dictatorships. And even before that happened, just before it happened, the US knew that they were going to fall because we backed out, and they created Operation Babylift. And it's controversial, so I encourage you to check it out online or on ChatGPT. But bottom line is, a lot of Vietnamese babies and kids were taken from their families, or with their families in some cases, and brought here to the US. And a lot of them flocked to Orlando. Why? Well, if you're from Vietnam, which is a South Asian tropical country, you probably don't want to be living in Chicago or Minnesota where it gets cold. So they flock to Orlando for some of the same reasons people are flocking to Orlando and to Florida right now. Number one, obviously, is the weather. Orlando is much more similar to Vietnam climate-wise than, say, Idaho or something like that. Back then, houses were considered very affordable. And if you look across major metropolitan cities in the United States, Orlando is still considered more affordable than most of them. And of course, they love Disney. We owe so much to Disney. Even back then in the mid to late 70s, the Vietnamese culture, Vietnamese folks loved Walt Disney. My wife is Brazilian. She grew up coming from Brazil to go to Disney And I know this is a side note, but that's why one of the main reasons there's so many Brazilians in Orlando right now, because they love Disney. They grew up coming to Orlando, and then they've learned to understand and love Orlando, and now they're here investing and starting businesses. Same thing happened with the Vietnamese culture back in the late 70s and early 80s. So why the Mills 50 area? Well, the Vietnamese immigrants couldn't get financing when they came. So they were all, coming here in droves and decided to team up. Some families got together and put their cash together and purchased a piece of real estate right there on Mills 50. You may have heard of it. I mentioned it earlier, the Donga Supermarket. It opened in 1982, the year before I was born. It's been here for a long time, and it's become a cultural touchstone for our Vietnamese community. And obviously, so much has built up around that area. And what has started as different restaurants opening up, offering $7 bowls of pho, has now evolved to include a Michelin-Star kitchens and modern fusion concepts that honor the traditional Vietnamese tradition while raising the culinary bar. What once drew immigrants seeking safety now attracts tourists and foodies. That feels ironic, right? They used to come here for safety, and now what they've created as immigrants has turned into something that supports our tourism culture and gives us a lot of benefit living here in Orlando, because we get to take advantage of getting to eat at those great restaurants. This is proof that immigrant success stories can also be citywide growth stories. We should be embracing cultural diversity and welcoming it. Look at what it's done to the Mills 50 area in Little Vietnam. Did you know that Orlando is the only place in the world that has a Vietnamese American restaurant that has been awarded a Michelin star 2 years in a row? Let that sink in. Orlando is becoming, and already is, a major player in the food scene. We have, 11 Michelin star rated restaurants. We have a 2-star rated restaurant. Maybe it's up to 13 now, I think. I should probably go back and listen to my own my own episode about the Michelin stars and stuff. We are an exploding food scene. People are coming in from out of the city to open up restaurants that are on par with Michelin star quality. And you have homegrown chefs and restaurant groups that have started right here in Orlando, like a lot of these Vietnamese folks with Vietnamese backgrounds. I'm going to highlight Camille in Baldwin Park, created by Chef Tung Phan. That is the restaurant that has been awarded a Michelin star both in 2023 and 2024. You don't have to drive out to Disney property, okay? You don't have to fly to New York or drive down to Miami. It's right there in Baldwin Park, overlooking the lake. And his story reflects Orlando's openness to culinary experimentation and cultural fusion. It's not just a straight up Vietnamese restaurant. Like most Michelin star and Michelin quality restaurants, it's some amalgamation and combination of different cultures, but certainly with a key focus on Vietnamese food. So how about not so fancy, right? Maybe you and your wife don't want to go drop $500 or whatever it is on a Michelin star rated meal. Kobe Steakhouse. Did you know that was started right here in Orlando by Vietnamese immigrants? How cool is that? How many birthday parties have you been to there? I've been to a bunch. You bang that gong, you put on the silly hat. The guy throws up the shrimp and catches it in his breast pocket. As a matter of fact, we went to a birthday there one time where the guy who was our chef, he sits up there in front of the hibachi grill and puts on a show for you. He was your classic white American dude. And the reason we went there is because he was a friend of the birthday girl. And it was the funniest thing because he did not look Vietnamese. He did not look Asian at all. His physical features, he was a good old American, regular looking white dude. And he started talking with an Asian accent. He had been trained to speak with an Asian accent to give the Southeast Asian accent to give the people there who were coming there still that expect to see somebody who appears to be of Asian descent to still give them a show. So that's pretty hilarious. And to hear him switch off and on his broken Asian accent to his regular white boy accent was pretty funny. And so the founders of Kobe Steakhouse actually fled from Vietnam at the end of at the fall of the South Korean regime, and again started in Altamont Springs, the first location. Now they have 13 locations. They've expanded all over the place, including a huge presence at a very popular restaurant on I Drive. Now, I mentioned my son's favorite soup is pho. He likes it so much that for his last birthday dinner, he asked to go to a pho restaurant. And trust me, my wife was thrilled about that. There were literally no pho places in Orlando until the fall of Saigon and the influx of Vietnamese into Orlando. Can you imagine that? How many pho places can you picture in your mind right now driving through the Mills 50 area? Is there like five, seven? And then if you go out, there's pho places everywhere. Now there's pho chains, right? Fast food pho. I mean, it's nuts. They're all over the place. And we that is due into large part of the influx of those Vietnamese back in the 70s and 80s. Now, there's seemingly silver linings everywhere. All right, we all have sad stories in our lives, or we read them online, we watch them in the news, or whatever the case may be, and you think this is a terrible thing. But if you go off a few years in the future, many times that sad story, although it's still sad and many times tragic, can come with a silver lining. I live my life with the mantra of what's the best that can happen. And yes, it was terrible that the North Koreans took over the South Koreans and all the atrocities that happened there. But the silver lining is that Orlando got to accept these immigrants. And so I just want to say thank you to all the Vietnamese immigrants that are listening out there, or if you are married to one or related to one in some capacity. Thank them on my behalf, because it's because of them that they brought their food here. And boy, do I love Vietnamese food. The hardworking nature of the Vietnamese is baked into their culture. Okay. Did you know, just as a side note, one of my good friends is Vietnamese, that every single word in the Vietnamese language is a single syllable? It's kind of fun, right? His name is Ka Vu, all single syllables. So shout out to you, Ka. But anyway, back to their hardworking nature. It's due mainly to the fact that in Vietnam was really kind of a developing country, right? Back during the Vietnam War, it didn't have a lot of industry, and so pretty much everybody who left Vietnam, for all intents and purposes, either was a farmer or came from a farming background. So they brought this hardworking, nose to the grindstone. I have to get what I need and not be given stuff, right? This is what the American dream was built off of, what our founding fathers have talked about, what so many political advocates, or excuse me, political pundits talk about. Oh, you don't need to be handed your free meal and all this other stuff. Whether you believe that or not, the Vietnamese culture certainly has that mindset. Local chef Hoi Tin, I hope I said that right, Mr. Tin, he said it best about their culture. We're like farmers, and farmers don't skip a day of planting and watering their plants. That basically means they're always working. They're never going to give up. Expect more from our vibrant Vietnamese community in the near future. It's already happening. Change and innovation is continuing in Orlando, and that includes with our culture, and that includes with our food scene. Here's an example. Cecilia Nguyen and her husband, Johnny Tung, transformed the original Tang Hung Market over there on Mills 50, right next to the Dong supermarket, into a thriving food hall called Mills Market. Yeah, I know that's very original. And we already had 903 Mills down the street, which to me is a little bit controversial, but whatever. Mills Market Food Hall is now there. It blends different market concepts. So you have multiple restaurants in there. You can get a banh mi sandwich, which is the traditional Vietnamese or Korean, I forget which, pork sandwich. You have the boba tea, shaved ice. It's a global fusion. And it has the Uni Girl little shop in there, which serves handheld, basically snack food. Okay, these like fried rice cakes. I don't know how else to describe them. Filled with savory and sweet things. So good, in fact, that little uni girl shop inside of a market concept there in Mills Market is recommended on the Michelin guide. So we are here, stamp Orlando on the map as a culinary food mecca. People need to be traveling here just for the food scene. They already are. Trust me on that. And we have the Vietnamese to thank in large part. If you look at the Michelin Guide restaurant, so many of the restaurants on there are have some sort of Asian fusion intertwined in there, like Unigirl and like Camille. You already know I think Orlando is the best city in the United States. We are a melting pot. We attract so many different cultures. We have a huge LGBTQ LGBTQ community. We have a vibrant art scene. We have live music everywhere. Obviously, we have Disney. We're only an hour from the beach. We have no state income tax. We have arguably the largest university in the country in UCF on any given year, and it's just getting better. We're growing. Our real estate prices are still relatively low compared to other major metropolitan areas. I love Orlando. If you don't already, you should. Don't forget about my real estate services. Speaking of that, when it's your time to sell or buy a home, think of me, Phil Kruse. That's Kruse with a K, Kruse. I am a listing specialist. It's harder to sell your home now than it was a year or 2 years ago. With the sustained high interest rates, I have a strategy for you. Stress-free, high price. We'll get it under contract within the first weekend. Talk to me about the auction effect. I have an episode about it on my podcast. Remember, a portion of all my real estate commissions go to charity. I love supporting our local community right here in Orlando with not just my money, but my time. I put my mouth where my mouth is, as I like to say. I walk the walk. Of course, follow me on all social media platforms. My last name is Kruse with a K, Kruse. Like and subscribe to my podcast. Hit the bell on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes. You know what to do. And always know that your best life in Orlando is within reach. Keep embracing every moment. Cheers. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.